Good day everyone, my name is Ruvini Grace Bimones and I am going to report the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and it is also known as A Christmas Carol, which is a novella by Charles Dickens, first published in London by Chapman and Hall in 1843 and illustrated by John Leech. So, let's start. So, here is the summary of the story. A mean-spirited, miserly old man named Ebenezer Scrooge sits in his counting house on a frigid Christmas Eve. His clerk Bob Cratchit shivers in the anteroom because Scrooge refuses to spend money on heating coals for a fire. Scrooge's nephew, Fred, pays his uncle's visit and invites him to his annual Christmas party. Two portly gentlemen also drop by and ask Scrooge for a contribution to their charity. Scrooge reacts to the holiday visitors with bitterness and venom, spitting out an angry "Bah, humbug!" in response to his nephew's "Merry Christmas." So later that evening, after returning to his dark, cold apartment, Scrooge receives a chilling visitation from the ghost of his dead partner. So he is Jacob Marley. Looking haggard and pallid, relates his unfortunate story. As punishment for his greedy and self-serving life, his spirit has been condemned to wander the earth, weighted down with heavy chains. Marley hopes to save Scrooge from sharing the same fate. Marley informs Scrooge that three spirits will visit him during each of the next 3 nights after the wraith disappears. Scrooge collapses into a deep sleep, so he wakes moments before the arrival of the ghost of Christmas past. A strange childlike phantom with a brightly glowing head. The spirit escorts Scrooge on a journey into the past to previous Christmases from the Hormuzon's earlier years. Invisible to those he watches, Scrooge revisits his childhood school days. His apprenticeship with a jolly merchant named Fezziwig and his engagement to Belle, a woman who leaves Scrooge because his lust for money eclipses his ability to love another. Scrooge, deeply moved, sheds tears of regret before the phantom returns him to his bed. So the next one is the Ghost of Christmas Present, a majestic giant clad in a green fur robe, takes Scrooge through London to unveil Christmas as it will happen that year. Scrooge watches the large, bustling Cratchit family prepare a miniature feast in its meager home. He discovers Bob Cratchit's crippled son,
Tiny Tim,
a courageous boy whose kindness and humility warms Scrooge's heart. The spectre then zips Scrooge to his nephews to witness the Christmas party. Scrooge finds the jovial gathering delightful and pleads with the spirit to stay until the very end of the festival, or festivities. As the day passes, the spirit ages, becoming noticeably older. Towards the end of the day, the show Scrooge two starved children, ignorance and want living under his coat. He vanishes instantly as Scrooge notices a dark hooded figure coming toward him. So that is the Christmas yet to come. He leads Scrooge through sequence of mysterious scenes relating to an unnamed man's recent death. So, Scrooge sees businessmen discussing the dead man's riches, some vagabonds trading his personal effects for cash, and a poor couple expressing relief at the death of their unforgiving creditor. So Scrooge is anxious to learn the lesson of his latest visitor, begs to know the name of the dead man. After pleading with the ghost, Scrooge finds himself in a churchyard, the spirit pointing to a grave. Scrooge looks at the headstone and is shocked to read his own name. He desperately implores the spirit to alter his fate. promising to renounce his insensitive, avaricious ways and to honor Christmas with all his heart. Whoosh, he suddenly finds himself safely tucked in his bed. Overwhelmed with joy by the chance to redeem himself and grateful that he has been returned to Christmas Day, Scrooge rushes out onto the street hoping to share his newfound Christmas spirit. He sends a giant Christmas turkey to the Cratchit house and attends Fred's party. To the stifled surprise of the other guests, as the years go by, he holds true to his promise and honors Christmas with all his heart. He treats Timmy Tim as if he were his own child, provides lavish gifts for the poor, and treats his fellow human beings with kindness, generosity, and warmth. So here are the characters. First is Ebenezer Scrooge, which is the protagonist or the lead man. A cold-hearted miser who hates Christmas. Tale of his redemption by three spirits. The next one is the Ghost of Christmas Past. The first spirit to visit Scrooge. A curiously childlike apparition with a glowing head, he takes Scrooge on a tour of Christmases in his past. Uses a cup to dampen the light emanating from his head. The third one is the Ghost of Christmas Present. The second spirit to visit Scrooge, a majestic giant cloud in a green robe. So his lifespan is restricted to Christmas Day, and he escorted Scrooge on a tour of his contemporaries' holidays celebrations. The next one is the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. The third and final spirit to visit Scrooge, a silent phantom clad in a hooded black robe. So he presents Scrooge an ominous view of his lonely death. The next one is Jacob Marley, the business partner of the miser Ebenezer Scrooge. Next is
Tiny Tim.
Tim is a cripple. He dies from lack of simple food and medical care. The next one is Bob Cratchit. Is Scrooge's clerk and works in unpleasant conditions without complaint. So his eldest son is Peter Cratchit, who inherits his father's stiff-colored shirt for Christmas. The next one is Mrs. Cratchit. Bob Cratchit's wife is a kind and loving woman. The next one is Martha Cratchit, the eldest daughter who works as an apprentice at a milliner's. The next one is Belinda Cratchit, the second daughter. Fred. Fred is Ebenezer Scrooge's nephew and only living relative. He invites Scrooge to his Christmas party each and every year. A gentleman of some means. He is a kind-hearted, generous, cheerful, and optimistic man who loves Christmas, and his mother is Fan, which was Scrooge's sister. So Mr. Fezziwig provide contrast with Ebenezer Scrooge's attitude towards business ethics. Scrooge apprentice under Fezziwig. Despite this, the elder Scrooge seems to be the very antithesis of Mr. Fezziwig in appearance, actions, and characterization. Belle is a beautiful woman who Scrooge loved deeply when he was a young man. So Belle broke off their engagement because after Scrooge became consumed with greed, the lust for wealth, he dumped him. She later married another man. So here's the theme of the story. The past, present, and future. The thread of time. So there are the three ghosts appears to Scrooge to show him how he is living sinfully and what the consequences will be if he doesn't choose to live a better life. Next one is family. So the entrance of Scrooge's nephew from at the beginning of the story introduces another side of the miser. Scrooge is not unfortunate in the way of relatives. He has a family awaiting to his presence, asking him to dinner, wanting to celebrate the season with him, yet he refuses. The next one is greed, generosity, and forgiveness. In here, Scrooge is a caricature of a miser, greedy and mean in every way. He spends all day in his counting house looking after his money, but is so cheap that he keeps his house in darkness, his fire small, and allows no extravagance even on Christmas Day. So here's the last theme of the story, which is Christmas and tradition. A Christmas Carol was published on A Christmas Story and takes the form of a Christian morality tale containing a moral lesson that the highly religious and traditional English population of Dickens' time would enjoy. Its structure with 5 staves instead of chapters is a metaphor for a simple song with a beginning, middle, and end. So, the next story is also by Dickens, which is The Signalman. So, The Signalman is published on 1866, and it is a short story by the English writer, which is Charles Dickens. In the story, a practical-minded narrator meets a railway worker who has been seeing supernatural visions. The narrator doubts the man at first, but at the story's conclusion, a strange event makes him a believer. So here's the summary of the story. It opens with the narrator, who, for unexplainable reasons, has chosen to pay a visit to the signalman whom he doesn't know, standing at the edge of the rail gorge, shouting down to the signalman in his hut. The words he shouts twice are, "Hello, below there." While that seems like a simple enough greeting, it winds up carrying significance. So the narrator and the signalman eventually became friendly, and spent some time talking about the signalman's life. By the second visit, the signalman feels comfortable enough with the narrator to confide in him that he's been seeing a ghost. At first, there was a railway accident that killed or injured a number of people. Then a woman on a train died suddenly with no explanation. But what really terrifies the signalman is that the ghost now has appeared a third time, and he doesn't know what tragic thing is about to happen. While the signalman relates this story, the narrator listens intently but skeptically. He likes the signalman and wants to believe him, but the narrator at heart is a practical, realistic person. He doesn't believe in ghosts, and instead, he thinks the signalman is hallucinating. So the ghost voice the narrator thinks is just wind moving through the gorge. The tragedies are a coincidence. In a moment, however, he realizes that there are other men around him, and that the figure is a railroad worker, climbing down the steep cliff into the dusky bowels of the cutting. He sees a corpse covered in a sheet and is crushed to learn that the signalman was just killed by a passing train. Here are the characters from the story. The first one is the narrator. So the story doesn't provide a great deal of biographical information about the narrator. But we know that he is intelligent and friendly, and also that he is very practical-minded. So the signalman is a late to a middle-aged individual who works alone in the narrow gorge. His age and solitude contribute to the narrator's skepticism about his supernatural visions. While the ghost, as with many Charles Dickens stories, this one has a ghost. The ghost appears to the signalman, and only the signalman, at the mouth of the tunnel and waves his arm as if to warn the signalman to get out of the way of something. So here's are the theme of the story. The first one is responsibility. The signalman is haunted not only by his own future ghost but by his duty to protect train passengers, conductors, and other crewmen on his line. He neglected his duty as the signalman and forgotten his responsibility. The next one is reality versus unreality. In ambiguous and stressful situations, we often question whether we are seeing things clearly or what the nature of reality is. The stranger or more disturbing our first interpretation of events is, the more likely it seems that we are incorrect or living in unreality. So that's all. Thank you for listening.